Okay, so to continue on, chapter 1 of this book that I wrote, Sibilus and the Seven Objects of Culture by Margaret Darrowzette Gordon, the first in my Gaia series, okay? A portrait of Sibilus Dicker. Chapter 1. Sibilus lived in a mansion on Madison Avenue in New York City with her father. Her mother lived in a duplex a mile or two uptown. Sibilus was tall for her age and had black hair. Her eyes were amber and speckled with hazel. Something was feral about her eyes. They hinted at a faint glow of yellow, like the fallow grasses and tree buds coming back to life in the woods when the cold rain of early spring came. Her mother had bought her thick glasses to cover them up. "Something isn't right about them," she'd said. Sibilus's ears were longer and pointier than they should have been. "We'll homeschool her," said her father. She had an aquarium filled with tropical fish in her bedroom that glowed at night with effervescent waves and animated bubbles. The bright blue pebbles at the bottom of the tank made her feel like she lived on a spooky beach with cryptic clouds and eldritch sea nymphs. Sibilus was homeschooled in the mornings by her private tutor, Bob. And in the afternoons, she went out with one of her many babysitters who hailed from all 7 continents and at least 10 major U.S. cities. Zhao, the fashion student, took her once to the Museum of Costumes, and Peter, the painting major, took her to a new gallery show every week. She loved watching the penguins and the bats at the zoo, and the dinosaur skeletons in the Museum of Ancient Things fascinated her. Her old friend in the park had a different idea of home than most. He lived on the rocks, not far from the copper statues of fairies and other nonsense. On weeknights, she met her mother at a restaurant for dinner. Her father's maid, Athena, accompanied her there in a taxicab before leaving her to wait for her mother out front. After dinner, her mother escorted her back. She would watch her daughter as she slammed the cab door and walked into Vetiver Deker's mansion, the home of her estranged husband. A peculiar place, uptown now. She always crawled into bed with her clothes on when she got back to her duplex after saying goodnight to the full-time nurse he had hired for her. On Saturday nights, Sibilus ate at home with her father. They sat together at the same end of the long table in his expansive dining room. She interrogated him while she ate. He insisted. What she asked him ranged the gamut from the mundane to the cosmic. All was a mystery to her. Her questions were different every week. Of that, she made a point. All of them, that is, except for one. "Dad, why aren't you eating anything?" She had been making a point of asking him this for as long as she could remember. It was the only request her father refused to oblige. He kept the answer to himself, like a warm and secret pet rat in the pocket of his dinner jacket. All right, January 18th, 1992. One Saturday. On Saturdays, Sibilus spent the majority of her day with her father in his library. It was there that he told her many stories about ancient times and obsolete cultures, from beliefs and myths to secrets and histories. In the middle of his library stood an old globe on an ornate wooden stand. She often watched him trace his fingertips and cup his hands over the geography of the earth. He pinched the air over the dot on the map where they lived, a tiny island, Manhattan. He traced his fingertips over the Atlantic Ocean like he was trailing a piece of seaweed outside a small motorboat, and cupped his hands over Europe like he could make it disappear down a drain with his palms. Finally, after Russia, her father reached his last stop. He pressed down on China with his pointer finger and proclaimed, "Where the I Ching comes from." His daughter loved the globe more than her aquarium. It looked like a toy, but it was real. She used to sit by it and stare at it for hours. She had memorized the geography of the earth, and it was her habit to check that the countries were still in the same place. It had details of both land and sea topology. "Did you know, Sibilus, that this globe marks the precise location of every volcano, active and inactive, on land and underwater? It does so with a tiny red dot." Dad, how old is it? Her father laughed. His eyes, flecked with gold, looked like they were about to sprout clouds and almost rainbows. His chortling made the library in his mansion scopic, like the release of humidity after a mid-afternoon thunderstorm. That, my dear, is a secret. Sibilus scowled. She looked down at the globe, nudging it with her fingers and spinning it slowly. She had noticed odd things about it before, and her father's admonition of a secret was multiplying her curiosity exponentially. Dad, I have already observed that it is not of the common standard. I have been to many museums, and I have seen lots of things. In fact, 1 month ago, my private tutor, Bob, brought in a newspaper headline. The Soviet Union had finally ended. It was no longer the USSR. He told me about the restructuring of borders and governments. Bob was very excited. The Saturday after that, I ran toward the globe. You were in your office, still on the phone. I spun to where I knew the Soviet Union was, but it wasn't there anymore. The twinkling dots of yellow lights that stand in for the borders of countries were in a different arrangement. Many of the boundaries of nations were moving all around the whole map, like they had not made up their mind, like they had not yet decided on the best spot to catch their prey. The lights were restless and squirmy, like carnivorous insects dancing on the surface of a pond. She looked up into her father's eyes. The names of the new bounded territories were being rewritten, like there was something inside beyond the illumination and electrical wiring. The typeface moved like it was tapped into the news headlines, and even the very earth itself. Sibilus's voice was raised in excitement and building in frustration. Dad, you must tell me, how does it know? Vetiver de Coeur was smiling, although the lines on his lank and angular visage no longer hinted at laughter. He clenched his jaw and his mouth barely moved as he spoke. Well, there are precious charms inside, little one. Oh, I want to see, Sibilus responded plaintively. He turned away and scratched the lower part of the back of his scalp. I did not mean to say it that way, Dad. I know I am already 8. Sibilus regained composure only to lose it again right away. I really want to see the charms, Dad, please. He looked down into his daughter's eyes of supplication and chuckled to himself. They stood in silence. That is one thing, dear, I'm afraid to say you will never see. Her father smiled shrewdly, reached into his pocket, and took a key out of his blazer. He held it in front of her brow with a beseeching look on his face. I have the key, and it belongs to me. Try all you might, naught will pry open the globe, only this precious little key. It dangled in front of Sibilus's eyes from its aged rope like a poisonous spider come down from its web. All right, that's the end of chapter 1. We'll do chapter 2 hopefully tomorrow. All right. Thank you for listening. Ciao.